A healthy and high-performing organization is one that has a strong focus on both the visible and the invisible, the process and the people. And the visible things include the operational systems, the budgets, the mission statements, the products, the machines, and the resourcing, and even the job descriptions. And the most visible thing of all is those results. And if we're to run effective and high trust organizations, we must see results. But results aren't enough. We have to also focus on the things that are more difficult to see. The invisible things, including the thinking, the feelings, the wellness and fulfillment of the people, and everything that occurs within and between us as human beings. If we are to run whole and effective and high trust organizations, we must also focus on the things that are more difficult to see. And while the invisible parts of our efforts are often considered the soft side, it is more accurately described as the harder side. It's harder because it isn't as immediately apparent the way the visible sides of our lives are to us. And the invisible and visible pieces of our lives and work, our systems and the thoughts and feelings of the people who use them are in a constant tension with one another, in spite of the reality that in our best world, they're aligned. And this is why when I've asked my friends who are CEOs if they could go back and study two things, the most common answer I hear is accounting and psychology. Like most of them will say that leading is about resourcing and it's about people. And you have to be a master of both. And the most fundamental paradox of leading is that is at the core of our need for trust is the tension between human being and human doing. And Sab, this is why I am so excited for our guest today. We have become friends very quickly. And as you know, he gets us and we get him. So off we go.
Let's get this wild conversation started. Welcome to the Wild Conversation, where human being and human doing converge, reshaping the world of leadership, culture, and performance. Today, we get to have a wild conversation with Jeff Schiefelbein. Jeff is a managing partner at Undivided Life, a firm with laser focus on helping people unleash their full potential and succeed in every aspect of life. He's a co-host of the Beatitudes, a religiously funny podcast for men. He's an award-winning entrepreneur, national motivational speaker, and culture-building expert with a proven track record of launching and leading businesses that use timeless principles to achieve sustainable growth and workplace excellence. Before Undivided Life, Jeff co-founded Five, an energy advisory firm where he designed and implemented a culture architecture that propelled the firm to numerous accolades for growth, culture, innovation, and leadership. Jeff lives in Dallas, Texas, with his wife and their 7 kids. Jeff, thank you for being with us today.
It's a great honor to be with both of you, friends with Rob and now friends with Sabbath. I have a great life. What can I say?
So good. Jeff, we're going to play a quick round of wild cards. Didn't prep you for this one, but it's a fun way we love to dive in deep quick. We have a deck of 52. I pulled 10. I do not know what's on the other side of these. So we'll each just choose a number between 1 and 10, and we'll answer a different question. So I'll go first. Jeff, you can go next. Rob will round us out. Today, I'm going to choose number 5. And it says, who in my life or work needs my encouragement today? This is an easy one. One of my daughters is going in for testing and interview today as a part of the admissions process for a potential school next year. I told her, go in there, introduce yourself, and then they're your friend. And she is such a good friend. So definitely just speaking life into her today.
Awesome.
All right, Jeff, choose a number between
number
1 and 10.
1. Let's start with number 1.
Number 1. What important details on your agenda are a part of your bigger purpose?
The important details on my agenda that are part of my bigger purpose, and I'll just say today, I have a couple of one-on-ones, which is the diving deep into the human person, helping to unleash whatever they're called to be, the full fulfillment of them. And that's a huge part of the mission and the success. The other thing on my agenda today is we're recording this on the day of like National Night Out. So I'm going to have all 7 of my children and my wife. We're going to be at the neighbor's house. We're going to be in the front yard. And that idea of building community alongside my beautiful bride and my kids and making that a priority, no matter what emails or work is stacked up at the end of the day, that is ultimately a bigger part of my mission.
Love that.
Outstanding. What number did you pick, Sab?
5.
I'm going 2 then.
Okay. Number 2, who gives you tough but important feedback?
My wife is first comes to mind. And I think I work with a team, our leadership team. I hope I believe they do. So the 2 people that came to mind are the 2 groups and I think, Sab, you give me important feedback. Sometimes it's tough. So I work with amazing people that I always aspire that they would give me tough feedback, and because I feel it sometimes. So it must be tough because it feels tough. So that's who came to mind. Thank you, Sab, for getting us rolling in the shallow end before the deep end. I'm not sure that's all that shallow though. Jeff, this is a weird moment for me because I'm on your podcast last week. And so I don't think I've ever done that. When we first met, we're like, let's do a podcast swap.
Do it.
And so just last week was really, really fun. Like, you kicked off my week in Dallas, and then as I told you, I had meetings and then flying around the country after that, but it was just a lot of fun being on there. You guys have a good time, don't you?
Yeah. And I think there's something about the fact that we all sit around a tiny table together, 3 men and a guest, that creates an energy or a connectedness that sometimes people have forgotten or lost, right? It's just being around each other.
Yeah.
You have that sense of where somebody's at as you're asking the question. You can feel the tenseness of their body. You can feel them relax in that moment of levity. And we love it. It's like living life out loud when we do our podcast.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun. And by the way, thank you for the socks. It's like, I love swag. I really do. And you commented on this, that I have not taken the stickers off, mostly because I think the stickers the labels are kind of cool, but I have my outfits planned where these are going to go. So
Rob, I mean, let's put this in perspective. The blue socks have my face on them. So it's like a weird swag to be given out along with my other co-hosts, but it's like shameless branding.
I have a bottle of wine over there with my face on it if you want it.
Yes.
It feels weird, but my team did something weird and did that at one point. So it was a ton of fun. It was really, really life-giving for me. And it was a combination of depth and fun, that's me. Felt very, very natural. I just want to dive in really, really quickly because your company is called Undivided Life.
Yeah.
And when I saw it, I knew immediately. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't even have to read what this is about. I can imagine that there's going to be incredible linkages and alignment with wild leaders. And I'd love to ask you, just out of the gate, like, what does it mean for you personally and vocationally to live undivided? And then, I'd love to hear a little bit about what does that look like for you? And then maybe how have you seen leaders struggle with that? I don't know if the right word is from you is integration, but what does it look like for them? Where do they struggle to be undivided?
Well, kind of starting at the beginning part of this, right? To be undivided has this wholeness to it. And I think this is so funny because our 2 companies and our 2 movements are so overlapped and intertwined. It's like the Venn diagram is just one circle here.
Yeah.
But there's a wholeness to it because we spend so much time working through our careers, growing into leadership, trying to impact the world in whatever our skills or gifts are. But if we're ever doing it without being in the maybe swim lane or the place that we're called to be, or we're even kind of faking our way, right? Like a lot of times to grow in an organization, I might pretend to like something. I might pretend to be good at something that is really, really a struggle for me, or I may even dampen a part of my life that is super important to me, only to figure out that then I got ahead, or I got the next role, or I became the next manager, whatever it was, under a set of false pretenses. And so I'm creating a trap of my own demise, but I don't blame you for it because it happens to almost everybody we know. And it's unfortunate because we've fallen victim to this lie or this myth that we have to be a certain way to have success, impact, to provide for our families and fill in the blank, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've just found that the more I allowed myself to be completely present to who I wanted to be in the workplace or in the nonprofit or even on the podcast, and I mean this sincerely everywhere I go, the more I let myself just be completely present as me and not as who I think Rob wants me to be on his podcast. This is intimidating. You've had Patrick Lencioni on your podcast. Coming after him is like, oh, well, how do I say something so brilliant? Forget it. What about if I just be Jeff, right? I got things to share. We're going to have some fun together.
Yeah.
But the more I've ever done that, the more it's been reinforced in a bold way. People just grateful that they don't have to cut through the clutter to figure out who you are, what makes you tick, where you're called to have the biggest impact, even the things that are important to you. So I'll give you a real one of this.
Yeah.
There's this faith aspect that you'd say, oh, you could have faith as long as it's mild faith in the corporate workforce. Because if you have a little bit of faith, people can appreciate that, prayers and wishes and blah, blah, blah. Then there's the part that's like, okay, well, you can say things in tough moments of like, I'm praying for you and whatever, and that's acceptable. But what if prayer is part of my everyday life? What if it's the journey that I'm on? What if it's actually more important to me to have a relationship with Christ than a relationship with my wife from a prioritization standpoint? And because of that, it turns into a solid marriage. That marriage is so important to me that it turns into solid parenthood that then makes me a more whole person, that I'm a better risk taker and I have better energy and all the things that you want from me and with me at work. But I've been hiding it and holding back because I don't want to step out of line or be put in the spotlight as being someone of strong faith. That happens to all of us. Every time, though, and I'm from 20s, 30s, now I'm in my late 40s, that I ever stepped further out into it, it's like I was respected more for actually believing what I believe. For having things that were important to me and that I wasn't willing to compromise on, allowed people to say, thanks. I don't have the same faith or belief system as you, but I love that I know who you are, that there isn't this duplicity in you. And look no further. If we step down from maybe the big banner of faith, the way people talk about their spouse, people hide how much they're focused on family illnesses, or they maybe go along to get along and talk badly about the ball and chain and how exhausting it is to have their kids. And it's such a beatdown. And I don't think most people really mean that, but they say it so much that it starts to take root in their brain. and it starts to be like a little bit of an identity that they accidentally became, almost like hazing. You don't even realize you're part of hazing when it's happening to you, because then you become it and then you can't get out of it. I think the same thing about gossip and negativity. And I know I'm kind of bouncing around, but I got the most incredible email the other day. And I got to tell you, even in the details, what it said. This woman said, I can't stop thinking about your donkeys, is the title of this email. I went to a business meeting with her, and my wife called because we have 4 miniature donkeys, and one of them was getting out because the fence had been knocked over in a storm. And I took the call.
Just pause really quickly. You literally have 4 miniature donkeys and 7 children. Okay, so go ahead.
And one of them's named Donkey Kong, by the way. He's like the coolest.
Come on.
Come on, man.
I want to play Donkey Kong. Go ahead. Sorry.
Come on over.
Okay.
So I just take this call and I'm like, move the donkeys over here, blah, blah, blah. I like have this very natural conversation, get off, and I'm like, hey, all right, I'm back. And didn't think anything of it. 2 months later, I get an email that says, I can't stop thinking about your donkeys. And the point she makes is, this is a working, successful woman who's in an organization that's pro-family. But she realized that she is trying to act like her kids are not a distraction when somebody's sick at home. She's trying to hide the stress of coming back from maternity leave when she's having to find unique times to sneak away, to pump breast milk, to do all this stuff. And here she is in an organization that on the surface and probably inside does support it, but she's victim to this myth that she's supposed to not be a mother who happens to be working. She's supposed to be the employee who goes home to be a mother. That's so twisted. And she said, your donkeys have taken root in my brain because you took a call from your wife. You loved and honored her. You were unapologetic about the fact that that's your priority. And I asked myself, why does Jeff do that and I don't?
Okay, so goodness gracious. We're just going to go to the deep end. We're going to go there, which is probably typical for us. So you kind of have explained that. Why is it that people in your experience struggle with something that you just described that is so immediately apparent to be true?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like what you just said, and I have my own opinions on this, but I want to hear yours,
too.
like, about my
Yeah.
experience. And so I want to hear what you have to say about that. So it's like what you said, I think most people would say, yep, I get it. Immediately. They would be
Yeah.
like, I want that. Then if it's so apparent, why do we struggle?
All right. Here's my, I'm going to say strong opinion, but I also want to hear yours on this. Human beings have the same wants, needs, and desires, and the same fears all combined. We want to look good, which means we also fear looking bad. We want to be accepted, which means we fear being rejected. All of these things are like mixed up, and we see them in different moments. But aren't we afraid in an environment that is either actually this way or we perceive it to be this way? We're afraid of being the one who is weak because I got to take care of family stuff instead of getting my job done. We're weak because I'm not fully focused here. We're weak because, or not even weak, we're not as committed. We're not a team player because we're not emailing late on Friday night and again on Saturday and Sunday morning. And so we're just trying to keep up with everybody else. But I bet if we went and dug into all their lives, most of those people are doing the exact same thing you're doing. They don't want to look bad. They don't want to look weak. They don't want to be rejected. And it creates this cycle of just like an ugliness of who we are as humans. We're not supposed to be emailing all weekend long and stuck in the minutia just to prove that we're working when we should be with family. So I think it comes down to fear of looking bad and a false belief system.
This is a cultural narrative that I see around what you described. And this is where I would come back to worldview matters. The fundamentals of what we believe about the human condition matter to all the comments you're making. And what I see often in the world is one of two approaches to solve that issue. So we all know that there's a problem, right? That we are not fully bringing our unveiled selves to whatever it is we're doing. And I want to get into that. Don't let me forget that. I was going to write the note down so I don't forget, but my pen's broken. So you're going to have to help me remember it, because I think I have a question around what that means to be our unveiled self. But what I see in the world, and this is affecting leader development, and organizational life, and family life, all of it, is one solution is, and I think that this has kind of gone by the wayside now to some extent, but it's still alive, is this concept of live your truth. So it's like, you do you, which I find incredibly naive and ridiculous on its own. Like that's just part of the story. But the other solution is all your stuff that's messed up about you isn't really messed up. It's just who you are. I'm probably not saying that very well. You know what I mean? But like the brokenness in you, embrace it as strength, which also feels like a very incomplete story.
Completely.
What are your thoughts on those two things? Like, you
like to keep it light, don't you?
Yeah, I really prefer we stay on the surface.
Yeah, I think it's put on our heart to be the best version of ourselves, to grow into that in every way that we can, and to not bifurcate that. Like, that doesn't mean succeed and crush it in the corporate world while your marriage is falling apart. It doesn't mean put parenthood on hold or civic life on hold until you quote unquote make it. So first I would start there. Like, we're not separate compartmentalized beings. We are an undivided soul, and that's how we need to operate in the growth and development and goodness of who we're called to be, what God made us to be. This kind of my truth is that we all became this weird like author of our own life, because we get to write anything we want on our social media. We get to post pictures of ourselves nonstop. We get to craft those pictures to be either exactly what we want them to be, or they're funny because we're trying to make them that way. And we've like hijacked the fact that we're not the creator, we're not the provider. We're just supposed to be playing our role within this. So I'm Catholic. Everybody knows it takes 2 seconds to figure it out if you're on my LinkedIn or anything. And people are like, oh, there's so many rules in the Catholic Church. And Catholic or not, rules create a place of incredible freedom. Because if I know kind of the construct of what it means to be in civil society, to be a contributor within a business, to be a good neighbor, if I know what's expected in even the dialogue around disagreement instead of quarreling. Debating is a great thing. Patrick Lencioni would be the first one to tell you this. Quarreling is not the answer. If I know what those rules are, then I have the freedom to figure out who I am in that. Not to say my truth is my truth and you got to accept it, and my faults are some sort of banner or badge of honor. It's more, I know where the rules are. I know where I come up short, and we all do. I know what I'm working on, and I know where, if deployed properly, I can have a big impact in every one of those areas that matter. But yeah, we've certainly become so inward focused, so zombied about like even looking down at our phone that we don't have a connection to other humans.
Mhm.
I think we don't necessarily know what it means to be a human being right now in the general society. And I think that
Yeah.
it's worse in civilizations like ours than in some other cultures.
We don't build trust by pretending to be whole. We build it by becoming whole, making an intentional investment in developing whole leaders and measuring a wild trust, a kind of trust between each other that is our deepest aspiration, that fulfills our wildest needs and expectations. That is at the core of this book, Whole Leaders, Wild Trust. This isn't a book about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about the courage it takes to show up, to lead not just with strategy, but with soul. Because in today's world, trust isn't a luxury, it's a requirement.
Pre-order your copy of Whole Leaders Wild Trust today. And for bulk book package deals, email us at contact@wildleaders.org for more information about ways to partner with Dr. McKenna to bring wild trust to your team, your organization, or your next keynote event.
When I think about, I think about the concept of wholeness,
Mhm.
that it's an aspiration we all have that we haven't achieved. We won't, we don't fully understand it because we
Yep.
still experience brokenness and fractures within us and between us. And it's interesting when you were talking about like, how do I bring like Jeff to this conversation or to any given moment? How do I bring Rob to that? And I think the other part of that whole story is that we don't live our lives, as Thomas Merton said, in a cloister. We don't live them in a vacuum. Like it's just anything that dismisses away the reality of the relationship piece of the human experience. This is going to be funny. We sound like a couple of philosophers right now. If they're like, or wannabe philosophers, because we're two organizational guys, right?
Yeah.
Having a conversation right like this, but it matters. And if you think about everything that we do, so much of our world has become about the individual, and I don't think we even realize it. I don't even realize the extent we've not to over pivot to technology, but have we ever lived in a time where our feeds are completely catered and pandered to what it is we want to see? And then I think about like, what am I not seeing? What is difficult for me to look at because I doesn't fit with me? And so the power of that is unbelievable. And the thing that kind of bugs me, because we all aspire to wholeness, and I don't think anybody would deny this, maybe they would, but is that even the concept of calling. So one thing that drives me, I have pet peeves, Jeff. I don't know if you noticed already, but is like this idea that the call on our lives, like this transcendent call, and in our worldview, that would be God, right? This transcendent call is something we experience alone, is the most ridiculous proposition, because I felt like God was calling me to be the president of a university that was in the middle of a cornfield. And that didn't bother me. But had I talked to my wife yet? It's just one example. And so like, it's not only calling, but even the way that we have done leader development. This is what everyone does. It's what everyone understands to be true, is we send people in a cloister of their own experience into some conference, as opposed to like continuous development that's occurring with the people we actually spend our lives with at work. And it's just, and the norm is we do it alone as opposed to developing together.
Brother, I think there's like the race to mediocrity is this desire to be homogenous in your leadership, as if leaders look like this puzzle piece, and we're all going to go listen to this speaker. We might do a small group for 8 minutes, then we're going to come back out of it, and that's leadership development. When the human person is nuanced, we do have the same human nature that drives us towards things like
Yes.
a desire, the desires we've talked about that have been put on our heart. But also, if I'm not encountered as an individual, like knowing what's the unlock for Rob, what's the thing that's going to drive
Yes.
Jeff to clear that false narrative so he can have breakthrough performance and results. If I don't encounter people like that, then I'm still going to have success, like business success. We're going to grow. We're going to have all the nonprofit impact, whatever, but only to the extent of some mediocrity or middle norm, and not to the breakthrough. Nothing that's wild, nothing that's undivided, nothing that's the game changer of it. At the beginning, when Saab went through my background, she talked about the energy company that I'd started called Five and that it's won these awards. This is
Yeah.
so cool. I'm a co-founder, chief culture officer, and I left the company 3 years ago. 3 weeks ago, my former company was named the #1 best place to work in America in Fortune magazine for small and medium businesses. That was something I wanted to experience while I was there, right? There,
Yeah.
like the vanity moment of like, look what we did. And I'm so grateful for them, like, and for the moment of FOMO, but I'm more grateful that it happened without me there, because what does it say? That we actually built a real culture, an architecture, if you will, that wasn't based on me, that wasn't based on the cult of personality or the ability to galvanize. Those are important things, especially at the beginning. But what we embedded there is a culture of coaching. It's of digging into each individual person's potential and helping to unlock them, not related to the metrics, not related to the output, but it's like, how can I help you to show up with excellence, with risk taking, with clarity in your communication, with a relationship that is tribunal or partnership based, all these concepts that do build trust, that do allow us to sprint in the same general direction without fear of what the other person is doing. And to see that organization get the results that it continues to get now, years after I've met or left, years after I left, I sit there and I say to myself, like, oh, praise God, this actually continues to prove what I know to be true about leaders and development, even though if you and I went in and we said, do you guys agree with this? Do you agree with what Rob's saying? People say, yeah, yeah. And as soon as we start to challenge them, they'd be like, wait, well, we have to worry about hitting the quarterly numbers, or that's great in the good times, but we cut our development programs because money was in a pinch, or that's nice marketing or nice recruiting and HR stuff, but that's not really what's going to move the needle. I can give you every example under the sun of the fact that's not true. A non-people-based strategy will get you somewhere. To have truly wholesome or whole integrated leadership principles, that's now you can have transcendent results, because now you can transform the human person as they're transforming your company, as they're co-creating something.
Yeah. As when I was with you last week, and then the next day I was with a bunch of business leaders, and one of the comments that was made that I've gotten used to is it's the same thing we started with, is this: there's a pretty solid understanding that wholeness is the goal. Like, that we're trying to understand the complexity of a human being, and that there is nuance within, and we share certain parts of the gymnasium, but we each need to work different muscle groups, like
Sure.
there is the nuance within. And so people see the need for looking at all the working variables and if we're really going to develop whole leader capacity and build trust that's not just for the moment, but that sustains and is maintained over time. They understand that. But some of the comments that we still receive are, this sounds like it's going to require a little bit of work. When you think about the organizations that you work with, like, what is the, sometimes, do you experience that where it's like people know that they want an undivided life, but they also like really simple airport book solutions?
Yeah, they hope that one day offsite did everything that you would ever need so that they can have a hockey stick trajectory. And those are just moments. There's nothing about that's anything other than a shared experience. The movement or the momentum comes from a highly intentional set of leaders, but a highly intentional approach that it absolutely is work. But gosh, Rob, if you sat there with the same people and you said, what if I told you that 3 years from now, this is what your company looks like, feels like, is experiencing, is impacting, is producing, is receiving in revenue? Like if you could just go through all those things and be like, I want that. Great. Well, let's just back up 6 months. 6 months before that, you would have to have all of this in place. Yep. Let's back up a year. Let's keep going all the way to right now. If we don't right now change the game on how people are working together, what does it mean to invest in the growth and development of another person? What does it mean to hold people accountable, to give them grace and freedom? You talked about fulfillment, right, during your intro, to give them something that's a place of fulfillment and not just a job and a checklist. And be like, wow, that is a lot of work. I said, well, we all just agreed that you want what I just described 3 years from now. You 100% of you were shaking your head up and down like that would be awesome. It doesn't just happen because you stay alive for 3 more years. Surviving and thriving are very different. And one takes effort. The other one, you just kind of bump along or go listlessly along with wherever the tides are going to take you.
Building
Thank you
trust
for
in your
listening to
business
this Wild
starts with being able to
Conversation
measure
podcast.
it so that you can
For
create
more
a pathway for
information,
change.
visit
Our Wild Trust
wildleaders.org.
Index measures
Click
the
on the
drivers of
Wild
trust at the
Trust
personal,
platform
team,
and
and
get
organizational
started with the
levels.
Wild Trust
We are
Index
building the
today.
largest database on the drivers of trust inside of organizations. This survey will inform growth imperatives and the necessary organizational change needed to fuel that growth. For more information, visit wildleaders.org, click on the Wild Trust platform, and get started with the Wild Trust Index today.
What has been, I know they talked about the ICP, your ideal client profile, but like, what is the organization that is ready to go? What are some of your either litmus tests or, it's like, how do you
struggle?
What are the people that are just like where you've had the most success with this? And then like, what is Undivided Life? It's like, give us maybe a little bit of that backstory and what is the, I don't know another way to say it. What is the pitch for Undivided Life?
Yeah. Starting with kind of the ideal client piece of this, we find people who say all the right things, but then they don't want to do the work. So I think you've described the wrong profile. We've had good clients who say, I'm all in because I see that culture and strategy are really two parts of the same whole, that they are fully intertwined, and I'm willing to listen and do the work. So it's very difficult coaching. It's unraveling some of the hardest stuff about a leader's blind spots or their baggage so that they can then be the leader that other people need them to be. And it's not trying to outsource, but trying to just get advisory work from us so that they can own the results. When you just outsource it, you know what that's like. It's going to have mild impact. Truthfully, most people turn culture and this idea of building something strong from a team-based standpoint, they turn it into HR and then they start to dismiss it. Even if they said it out loud, they don't grasp it. So I actually stopped selling culture consulting because people don't know what they're talking about. You do. There's a couple others that do. I started talking about strategic growth with human thriving at the forefront. Everybody wants growth. And if I say it has to have human flourishing, people are like, yeah, great. I like human flourishing. Well, really, that's what I'm selling. And the strategy is how you let me in the door to keep working through all the details of your company. So I have a couple clients that have really got that. It works a lot better if we actually own the business because then we don't have to let go of it when the client engagement's over. So we actually right now own a handful of businesses that we are fully invested in as well, deploying all these things. So maybe the ideal client is ourselves, and that's not a fair pitch. Yeah, but there's something to that. If you're not all in and you're not gonna say that you want to grow personally, you're just hoping all the people on your team get better, you're probably not a great candidate. Ideal clients for us are people that really say, I know what got me here won't get me there. And I want the challenge. Like I want the tough conversations. I want to take, that whole idea that good is the enemy of great. I want to take good things, dismantle them completely, and rebuild them. Maybe they come out the exact same as they were before, but likely not, because good is what stops us from pushing for something that could be so much better. Sometimes we're better off when the bottom falls out and your organization is facing bankruptcy or complete failure, because then you're willing to say, what can we do? Help us out. Being good gets in the way of being great.
Yeah. It's so, okay. So I think we are so violently aligned.
I got to put in a plug for you. I love the first time I was talking to you, you understood trust and measurement so that things that I'm talking about are scalable and repeatable and trainable. You understand that better than anyone I've ever spoken to before. And I literally got off the call with you and I turned to a couple of my executives and I was like, we're going to be working with this guy and I will be bringing him into other clients. We'll be bringing him into the companies we own. So I appreciate you so much. Like the violent alignment that we have, I feel it in my bones.
Yeah.
And what I think you're unlocking that I can struggle with a lot is how do I get other people to see it? Because I can't just say, trust me, I've done this before. The awards help. People listen to me because I have the awards.
Yeah.
But they're also just awards. Like I got to drive you to make change.
I had a client, Jeff, you'll laugh at this, because years ago I did a whole pitch, spent 3 hours with this executive team with a partner of mine. And at the end of it, he asked a great question. He said, why should I trust you?
Oh.
And I've not been asked since that question. And he said, and I said, you shouldn't. You don't know me yet. But I said, give me 30 minutes with your executive team and they'll trust me, because I will show them who I am. But
how do you do that? How do you do that? Like, here's a great question, because I'm doing these interviews for one of our clients. They get on there and all these people work for the guy who hired us. And I'm asking them tough questions and they're like, and by the end, they're all telling me their grievances and what should change. And they're kind of opening it up. But I think I have a high emotional IQ. How do you scale or repeat trust building if it's not Rob's personality?
Okay, so let me start with Rob's personality. So, and then I'll get to because I think one of the things that I'm more wired for maybe than some, but is what I would describe maybe as competent vulnerability.
Amen.
So I know, and when I say competent, I don't mean complete competence. I mean, I know what I'm good at, and I also am willing to share with you what I'm not. And I have some consciousness around that, but it's also like my wife would say, you overshare. So I do. So I'm not that afraid. And sometimes I regret it, if I'm honest, you know what I mean? When I share too many things, but when people see that vulnerability of understanding my weaknesses, and not just like setbacks, but like where I have failed people, when we own that, I feel like it opens the door. It's one of the things when you talk about scaling, and I just want to speak to our audience for just a second about, like, we're talking about some pretty deep stuff. And you just, Jeff, brought us to a surface level that's really important. A surface meaning approachable moment, because this whole concept of wholeness, which it can sound very philosophical and abstract, the whole concept of living an undivided life, it's like with trust. I've said this often. I said it on your podcast. Like, we don't get trust by talking about trust. It's so ridiculous to think that. And we do that all the time because we want some big solution, some simple solution, but it'd be the same as someone who doesn't swim, throwing them into the lake and going, swim.
I said it.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like they're going to drown. It'd be trust. This is what we do. And so what I'm wired to do, and from the very beginning years ago, was like to understand what is the scaffolding that scales, that's systematic, but not dehumanizing. So how do you create, this is why assessments mattered to me, is that we know so much. This is not news. Most of what's being published or said about any topic, motivation or strengths or competence or purpose, those things are not new. We know there's every organizational behavior textbook literally maps this stuff out. But could we create a way to unleash that capacity inside of an individual through something like an assessment that gives you guardrails or a scaffolding, or like bumper bowling, where when we're starting bowling, we just don't start bowling and not hit the gutter. We're going to gutter all day long. We need some of those bumpers to get us to see what success could look like.
Yeah.
And it's so we start with that structure, because the thing that every leader who's listening to this is feeling is like, okay, I get you guys, or the right ones, right? They're like, I want this. How do I do this? The first thing is to to change your paradigm of what you think about when you think about leader development and trust. That our model is we send people to a conference, or we take one assessment like you just described, as opposed to realizing, if this is that important, how in the world do we not have a strategic, structured rhythm that's just as important as our operational structure? And by the way, the operational side people struggle with too, and that's why EOS took off.
Yep.
Because every business leader in a small to mid-cap business is like, I don't have a good structure, and I have to have a structure. Well, you need a structure for this in unleashing human capacity also. And now I'll shut up and let you respond to
No, brother, it's so spot on. I think when you started in this world of like competent vulnerability, I believe in the assessment. There's maybe like an appropriate vulnerability share, it's kind of like that, those words. Man, people don't realize how disarming it is, the approach that you take. It's in your personality. It's probably innate in you. I don't think that you had to work hard to get there, but other people, you can show them that an appropriate level of vulnerability disarms a situation so that people relax the guard. If you relax the guard, then trust becomes more likely to open up, right? I love when you were talking about that. And you said that there was also in there, people are listening to us, we get up to this level that's approachable, and people say, I want that. I think it's just as key to note, there is actually people who don't want what you and I are saying. Yeah. They literally don't. They just want the system. They want the machine. They want the output. They have these rules. This is how you treat employees. This is how you cycle through them. And that, to me, people don't realize is a culture. It's just not one that I want to be a part of. So said. I love when somebody says, actually, I don't like your stuff, Jeff. Like, I think it's too people focused, or I've been rejected to speak somewhere because I can give corporate talks about leadership, but people know that I also speak at church gatherings and matters of faith. So I get rejected for that. And my answer is like, oh, thank God, I'm not supposed to be everything for everybody. Like, I need you to reject me because I need to stand for something. I need to be passed up for and now I'm going to speak to the listeners for a second. Maybe you get passed up for the next client engagement or the next raise or whatever, because you are living in this place of integrity and the structure you're in rejects that. Oh my goodness. Thank you for that rejection, because now you don't have to mold yourself to be something you're not and keep that going for another decade as you plow through serving those types of clients or serving that corporation. If you and I went around and talked to everybody we know that's retiring or recently retired, what do they talk about? I wished I would have spent more time focused on the things that matter in my life. I wished I would have not put family on the side. I have broken relationships with my kids. I wished I would have stopped chasing something that will never exist, that I'm going to hit this moment of success and then I can go back and be the person that I want to be to my loved ones and the people that matter most to me. Like, it's so strange. And I'm going to throw this other one out there that I just heard the other day. This guy said we chase the health of our youth. We use the health of our youth to chase wealth. And then we use the wealth of our old age to try to chase health. And what you end up in is broken relationships, broken bodies. Like, instead of having this over time fully integrated approach to health, to business, to leadership, to worldly success. Like, you can integrate all of those things and not put one on the back burner as if living a divided life is going to be okay because in a couple of years you'll be right back into being integrated.
Yeah. It's funny when you were talking about where that came from in me, whether it's my personality or not. I was thinking back to when I started teaching. I was 25 years old. I was running a graduate program. I had no business being a professor. And so, but I had studied on the job development literature, and I knew that people learned primarily from their experience. And so I knew that in a 3-hour class, So I actually, out of necessity, tripped into this concept of competent vulnerability. So like I didn't have the expertise to actually teach the class.
Yeah.
But what I did have was the expertise of every student in that room. And they'd all were working adults at the time. And so I set this kind of structure where half of the content was the textbook. We're going to deal with the ideas and the knowledge transfer that's necessary in many cases, whether you're in a college or whether you're in a job. And then the other half, I literally just leveraged the experience of the people in the room from that experience. And then that took a lot of me understanding, like, here's some things I'm good at, but there's a ton of things I'm not. What could I use that's there? And part of that was my own vulnerability and just saying, even letting them know, I'm trying to figure this out as we go. And it's just, so that piece was kind of, good golly, important.
Rob, you've interviewed amazing people and learned from some of the best, and they're in your book. And have you found somebody who you believe is done learning as they go? Look at Patrick Lencioni. I keep bringing him up. I've never seen him talk when he wasn't continuing to learn as he goes. Now, he's a great student and then a great proclaimer of what he learns. He packages it in a way that we can digest. But you can watch the evolution of him continuing to learn as he goes. And I think that's critical because people will see success, bestseller, guy on the stage and be like, that guy has it all figured out. And they create this comparison culture, which is just fundamentally not true. That person's not above you. They're not somehow built differently than you from a they're better than you standpoint, but they have not stopped learning as they go. They've not stopped that pursuit, and they haven't stopped asking that question and debating with themselves and others. How can I improve today for others and for myself? How can I contribute to the world, to the greater good through the skills and gifts that I have or the ones that I need to develop? And I love that. Like, we're learning as we go.
Yeah.
That's the fraud complex. Everybody has it, but some of us just get over it and keep going.
Well, you know what's funny, Jeff? I've been saying this for a few years that I really love type A personalities who have grown up. Some of my favorite people are people who this would have made no sense to them. Like you talked about them just now, but the people who turned a corner, and even the original investor in Wild Leaders, he died shortly after making the investment in the business, and like 2 months after. And when I went to his memorial service, somebody told me from his family, said, our dad had divided his life into two halves, the first 81 years and the last 3. And it was interesting because he would even said, like, it took me until in my 80s to figure this out, what you are saying, Jeff. And so that's a powerful thing. I want to just go here before our time runs out. So when I was coming to be on your podcast, my team, because we were getting to know each other, your organization had taken the Wild Trust Index. My team's debriefing with you while I'm on the plane to Dallas. And then showing you, kind of introducing you to our business model and hearing about yours. And it just, as we kind of like, I'll show you mine if you show me yours kind of moment.
Yeah.
And I gotta out you for this. And when I say this to everyone, don't feel like I'll say something else about this, but you scored really, really high on the trust index.
Yeah.
And what people don't know is that organizations that score in what we describe as the stronghold or even the fortress of trust. I think you scored in the fortress of trust.
That's right.
Which is a category within the category of the high. The up and to the right was like what people don't know is the leaders who are there look at those trust dials and they're like, how do I make it better? Tell me what you saw in that debrief. Like, what was going on?
I loved that whole process. First, I'll brag on your process and your team, because it's not like you just send over the results and the client just goes through them. There is a buildup and an understanding. There's a contextualization. There's a dialogue around different pieces. We're getting to connect emotionally. The data is already on the page. Thank you for a process that builds upon itself and not just results. Here's the invoice and here's the results. Like, I loved the way that played out. I can't wait for some of our clients to get to experience that too. So thank you. I think about that part, right? We saw the results. And by the way, I can tell you word for word every line that we didn't score highly on. And some of it, actually almost all of it, was by design because of where we are in our trajectory as a company. There's a lot of confusion around actual role clarity. There's a lot of switching out of who's doing what when, but it's kind of like we're in this dead sprint right now, but we're doing it with an incredible level of trust, which shows up there. But here's a reflection. My best man, great guy. I pulled him into one of my companies where I was just a manager back 21 years ago. And he worked for me. He was my first employee. That business grew like crazy. And when it sold for a fortune. And they credited the division that we were running and the 75 people that were helping all this division to work and the technology. But it started with me and my best man. His name's Benji. We went our separate ways. He ended up starting another business. He's had a very successful liquidity event. It's known in the press. And I'm very, very proud of this guy who, I'll joke about this, graduated with a sports science major from Texas Tech University and is now running this like top 5 energy consulting firm in America, right? But he sits down across from me and he tries to say thank you to me after, the transaction had closed. And I knew he would. Like, I got him into the energy industry. I used to be his boss. But he stops me and he goes, "Stop. Let me just say this to you." He said, "I want to thank you because for 2 years when I got in this industry, I thought you were such a jerk to me about these very specific things that you wanted me to get right every time. You wanted me to understand why they need to be done this way. You wanted to train me to do it in the most efficient, effective way. Then you wanted me to get into these relationships with everybody who worked for us." He was like, "You were so relentless at a time when it wasn't necessary or warranted because we weren't even that busy." And I always say, why is Jeff maniacal about my growth and getting this right? And then he starts crying and he goes, "It is the way that you treated me that caused me to understand that process of just because you scored perfectly on 9 out of 10, don't go home without coming back the next day and saying, how do I make number 10 better?" And he has had tremendous success. He's not even close to done. He's a wonderful father. He's got a great marriage. He's doing incredible things in the world, and he's still running that business. But I can tell you, he now has that same like grace-filled, like still loving other people. I don't expect perfection in outputs, but inputs, like the excellence of our inputs, the excellence of our efforts, the excellence in like desiring growth is a game changer. And that's exactly where I leave the Wild Trust Index. Like, okay, great. How do I make sure we never slip in the things we've done? How do I dial in on the things that we need to start improving? And how can I help to perpetuate this? Because what if we double in size in the next year? I can't just feel good that back in October of 25, we scored really well. That doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah. Wow.
No, I love that. I love that reflection. Thank you.
It was so interesting. We had another guest who's a dear friend. You'll meet at some point, Jose Rodriguez. And Jose came on and he was talking about, I don't know if even Stephen Covey's ever heard it said this way. Maybe sure he has, but he said, "I will only grow my organization at the speed of trust."
Hey,
and it was interesting because what he was saying was, I will not grow this faster than trust is being built.
Yep.
And that's a huge sacrificial statement because you can grow beyond trust, right? And
it helps your own pocketbook for the short term. So
for the short term,
the lure is right there.
It's right there. And so there's one thing I want to say is, if any of you are out there listening, you're like, okay, guys, I get it. And I want to take this effort. I want to do this as a seminar. I want to connect my operational reality, like the job we are on track to do. Every person, every team, every part of our organization is performing and connecting all those visible pieces, and then systematically, not dehumanizing, but in a system that breathes, creating the same intentional structure for connecting your people, the human beings, the souls who walk your halls or fill your Zooms, to that structure. Connect with Undivided Life and Wild Leaders.
Well, and I have this vision right now, Rob. Like, somebody wants to have the kickoff moment, right? It's not the movement, it's the moment. Bring me in and I'll give you a talk called Making Business Human. And my promise is everybody will be uncomfortable being comfortable when I'm done. There is no way you go through that talk leaving comfortable. And that's what I want. I want to agitate something in you. And then I want you to back up right after that and get your team on the Wild Trust Index and start working through, like, what are the ways that we can build up these leadership principles and this organizational trust, this group trust, and this individual trust because of the great work of you, Rob, and of your team. So this is like the ultimate one too. It's going to knock you
Okay.
out.
So here's a weird promise I've never done on the podcast before. If that company is sitting out there listening right now, Jeff and I will show up together and launch that.
That's right. I'm in. I'm
Okay.
in. I'll bring some socks.
You bring socks. Okay. All right. My last question as we wrap up is many leaders that we work with find themselves in a jungle of trust. The way they score that way, and they want to take that next step. These are chaotic environments. Team trust is low. Organizational trust is low right now, but they want to move the needle. If you could leave our listeners with one courageous challenge about living an undivided, trustworthy life for the remainder of this year, what would it be?
If you're in the jungle of trust and it is messy and disjointed, then I can promise there's people around you that have gotten under your skin that you don't want to deal with, that you're in an avoidant state with. My courageous challenge to you is to seek a way to respect, understand, and then appreciate what makes the people that you are furthest from in your organization, that you're emotionally disconnected from, get to know them on a human level, and then start to build up the how do two humans do a better job working together, and do this in that first drop and then in those ripples that come out from there, and work your way through the most like line of sight disjointed relationships you have until they become a place where you don't have to be friends, you don't have to hang out, you don't have to text each other pictures of the kids, but you have a trust that's built upon the fact that I see you for your humanity and your fears and your desires. And in that, we're going to build something that we are aligned on, and that I can trust you and you can trust me. And I'm going to go first because I'm willing to be hurt by you in my vulnerability and in my trust. Why should you trust me? You shouldn't, but I trust you and I'm willing to be hurt by you. That's where I would start.
Gold.
So powerful. Jeff, thank you for this conversation. The first of many. We could talk for hours. Like we could listen to you and Dr. McKenna, just continue the conversation. As we wrap up, we want our listeners to know what is the best way to connect with you and the work that you guys are doing at Undivided Life. Also to find the podcast, where can they connect with you?
Short and simple. Undivided.life is the website. I also write on LinkedIn every day, and there's only one Jeff Schiefelbein in the world that does that. And then finally, the Beatitudes with a D, the Beatitudes is on every podcast platform, and we're making conversations that matter very accessible through humor and holiness.
So good. Thank you. And we have one last wild question. Jeff, are you in a season of accepting yourself or changing yourself?
I'm in a season of profound acceptance that is so clear that I wake up in a place of being that doesn't challenge me. It just means that God gave me another day, and so I'm going to do my best.
Love that.
So
powerful stuff.
Good. Thank you, Jeff.
Love this. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this Wild Conversation podcast. For more information, visit wildleaders.org, click on the Wild Trust platform, and get started with the Wild Trust Index today.